What's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, where we talk about the adaptations of your favorite comic books. I'm with my good friend Brian, who I am just so very happy to spend my 40th birthday with. Hello, Brian.
Yes, happy birthday, Pete. Welcome to 40. Now we can
Yes.
both get those shirts that say 40 something in disguise, like the Transformers logo.
Okay, I'd love one of those. Yeah. I mean, hopefully I'll live to wear one. I almost had a fucking stroke. It's just been a nightmare for like
Oh
the past
God.
10 minutes. Yeah, because like let me just a little aside for our fans at home. By the way, this is like our 111th podcast episode. By the way, and we're going to talk about She-Hulk in a minute, episode 7, and we're going to talk about Andor episode 4. But here's a little story for you, Brian. We had like a all day training on Monday because the kids were off for school, and we also have this meeting every 2 weeks with the whole staff, which is only like 11 people. And my boss was like, "Oh, because of this training, we have to push our meeting back." And so my kind boss, who, um, you know, we celebrate people's birthdays when it's their birthday, like on the day they get a cake and they get a card. He decided to schedule the meeting after work on my birthday. So I guess we could kill two birds with one stone, you know?
Oh
And
God.
so like I had to stay. I don't normally have to stay this long, but I had to stay like an extra half hour at work today, and I was planning on recording with you, and I just was driving home, and oh my god, it was just a freaking nightmare, man.
Well, at least you weren't watching She-Hulk on the way home in the car.
Yes. I usually do that when I'm driving to work. So
Ah.
yes, there's less cars on the road. It's darker too, so that could be a problem. But yeah, I'm giving people too much of a glimpse into my life over here. It is my 40th birthday. It's going to be a shorter episode because I'm going to go out with my kids and eat and stuff. Um, but I should stop talking. She-Hulk number 7. Did you like this episode?
Yeah, I actually think this might have been the best one since the first one. I think this one had a little bit of depth and purpose to it
Yeah.
beyond the other one. And I just want to say, yes, I called it on Josh, and I'm doubling down here that Hulk King is what was his name? Todd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doubling down that Hulk King is Todd.
Okay. Wait, what the fuck? What is Hulk King? What?
That's the guy that that Josh texted. You see his name typing in all the intelligentsia sites and all the
Yeah.
like the stinger parts when they're showing the the needle and all that stuff.
Yes.
So
Well,
I think it's at Hulk King. I mean, there's no way it's at Hulkling because it has a little crown on it.
okay.
Yeah.
So then you're saying Todd, that's what, that other lawyer guy that's an asshole?
No, he was one of the people that Jen went on a date with, but we also saw him that he's a regular client of the other lawyer in the firm. I don't remember her name. Book.
Last name is Book. He was like the creepy one that was like, he called her a sample or something, right? Did he say some kind of weird thing?
I would buy that, but I don't exactly remember.
I think he called it like a specimen or something. I remember he was creepy, and they did it in such a way where like it was in a montage, so you kind of like overlook it. But I think that's a very smart observation on your part. I bet you that guy is connected to the intelligentsia.
Yeah, I knew Josh was too good to be true because he didn't answer any questions really. Like they didn't say why he was there or anything like that. I knew he was. I figured out he had to be with intelligentsia or he had to be the groom. So,
Right.
But I think it makes more sense that he was with the villains and essentially was like a spy trying to get Jen's blood.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is a little later in my notes, but like I kind of didn't like that one aspect of it. I liked so first off, one thing I want to say is that I agree with you too. I think this is like the best episode since the premiere. I do worry about that because this is the first episode that's written by a man out of like all of the lists.
I did notice that Zeb Wells was in the credits. Yeah.
And like Zeb Wells is a comic book writer. He's written a lot of Spider-Man. I mean, he's written a ton of different Marvel characters, and this episode just lands differently. And the best part about this particular episode is this sort of group therapy session. And I think that like what is achieved in that group therapy session is almost kind of undone by the fact that this guy Josh is a a spy. Like, do you feel that way or no?
No, I'm maybe, but maybe that's because I'm kind of like full of myself because I guessed it.
Well, the reason why the group therapy session is so good is because it really encapsulates what they're trying to say with this show. I mean,
Yes.
Jen has this, or She-Hulk has this little monologue about the popular friend that everybody is attracted to and wants to kind of get with. And she talks about how she's able to turn into that person. And I think that that's really interesting stuff. That's the gold right there. I said this in the notes, but like, the Hulk as a character is like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And there's so many different variations you can do on that idea of a person who essentially can turn into their polar opposite. And I think that that is really interesting to discuss about this show. Um, but then, like, it seems like it's sort of like an easy way out for the Jen part. Like, obviously for the Jen part of the story, she needs to kind of come to terms with the fact that she's both of these characters. Like what do you think is going to be the resolution between Jen and She-Hulk for
Yeah.
this show?
I do really like the comparison you made there. That Hulk is Jekyll and Hyde, is man versus monster, and this is like Jen or a better version of Jen. So it's like, what's the downside necessarily here, other
Right.
than people not respecting her for the way she was originally?
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of where the resolution has to come from, is that
Yeah.
she needs to get respect as Jen, not as She-Hulk.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's many stories that focus on this kind of dynamic of like sort of pretending that you're better than who you are. Like, you used to watch The Simpsons a lot, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like, that one episode where Marge gets that Chanel dress that she finds at like a thrift shop?
Oh yeah, and she redoes it like 4 or 5 times
Yeah, and
because
she goes to
wears
the
the same thing over and over again. Funny story.
yeah, yeah.
Kristen has a dress that's pink and black, and I always reference that episode, and she's never seen the episode.
Oh, well, see, your soulmate over here, I'm the one that gets it. You can make that
Oh,
reference with me. But there's many, 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 many stories where that happens, where like the main character is pretending to kind of be like above their status. And um what's interesting about this show is you kind of have that same dynamic, but she's not pretending to be She-Hulk. She is She-Hulk too.
yeah.
And I think that's what makes it slightly different. It's not like she's like putting on a disguise and becoming She-Hulk. She
Well, then
is
maybe
she.
the resolution is joined. So I do think there is going to be some payoff where she gets recognition as Jen.
Yeah.
And I also think that maybe the other half of that is that she's been avoiding the superhero lifestyle, and I think that she's going to fall more into that by the end of the season.
Mm. Mm. Do you think that we could have like a sort of like a reversal to where she becomes a superhero, but maybe she's sort of a uh, like a novice superhero that messes things up, but then as a lawyer, as a human lawyer, she's like a good lawyer? Like, do you think that's going to happen or no?
Yeah, I mean, maybe she'll leave the law firm, start her own firm or something, and then she won't be as She-Hulk anymore, and then she'll just do that as Jen, and then she'll be a superhero in the other form, and just separate the parts of her life.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And you know what? That might actually be the case. I think that could kind of work, especially if Daredevil's involved, because right now she's in LA, right? And she's working for
Yeah,
this sort of exclusive superhero law firm. Maybe she'll go to New York and open up her own law firm there.
yeah, there we go. Okay,
There you go. There you go. Okay. All right. See, man, look, you already turned my day around. I was having a rough afternoon. I'm already feeling good about She-Hulk.
all right, glad I can do that
Yeah.
for you.
Yes, yes, yes. So, I wanted to point out though that like I didn't like the jokes didn't land once again for like the first 10 minutes or so, and even when we got introduced to Man Bull and El Aguila or however you say his name,
I think that was right.
um, I didn't think that they were very funny at first, but once we got up to that session, I really liked them, and I really liked the other two guys. Do you know their names off the top of your head?
It was
Porcupine.
Porcupine and something with an S.
Saracen?
Saratin, yeah, something like that.
Saracen? Yeah, yeah. So, like, tell me how you felt about those guys. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, it was just a kind of little misfit band of wannabe villains, just kind of taking a page out of Emil Blonsky's book here, and just turning around their lives, trying to turn around their lives, I guess.
Yeah, and there was even the Wrecker was in that group
Oh
too.
yes, that's right, the Wrecker. Yeah, that was an interesting uh, addition to that little group there, especially because he and his friends attacked She-Hulk in the few episodes prior here, and clearly they were sent by the
The,
Hulk King guy
the-
we mentioned earlier.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I like that they were sort of able to like mend fences together, those two, She-Hulk and him, and he was actually very supportive of her. I really liked when all the guys together told her to delete Josh's number. That was like one of my favorite parts.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned that you didn't like that Josh was like a spy or a sleeper agent there. I
Yeah, yeah.
think I think that works better than having any of those members in the group be secretly bad. Like I think that would feel like a betrayal more than the quote unquote perfect guy in Jen's eyes there. So I'm kind of happier that it seems to be going that route rather than like Wrecker's still a bad guy and he got information he's gonna go back to Hulk King or some crap.
Yeah. That's a good point. Okay. I totally agree with that. Um, that dynamic that was especially around when we were like in our teens with like, teen movies and stuff that came out. You know how they would have like the girl that would be like a mousy girl with glasses and a ponytail, and then she would like have this moment where she would like take down her ponytail and take off her glasses and she'd just be this super hot chick.
Oh yeah, the quintessential she's all that moment.
Right. Exactly, exactly. Like She-Hulk the show is kind of like that because I mean I think Tatiana Maslany is a beautiful woman, right? And I think
Yeah.
that she's attractive, and I feel like they actually kind of go out of their way to make Jen appear unattractive, and just to kind of go in line with this idea of like, oh, men don't want Jen, they want She-Hulk, and it's funny because I feel like they like put a lot of effort into making Tatiana Maslany not seem appealing, and yet I'm still like, I think she's awesome. What's the matter with all these men? You
Yeah,
know?
I completely agree there. Yeah, maybe I think they go out of their way to make her look extra short. Like
Yes.
how a lot of times they'll use camera tricks to make people look like more of a similar height. I think
Right.
they avoid that completely with her, and so she looks a lot smaller. So then when she's as She-Hulk, she looks so much bigger, and there's like a huge drastic difference.
Yes. Very good point. Very good point. Yeah, I think it's like it kind of takes that dynamic and she kind of goes back and forth between that mousy kind of girl that you think guys don't like to this one that they're all attracted to. She just kind of keeps going back and forth between them. And I was wondering when you saw that montage at the very beginning of the episode when she was kind of prepping for her date, did
Yep.
you see that she like took a shot of alcohol?
Yes. I think it's I mean they've made a big point to mention that she can't get drunk as She-Hulk. But I wasn't ever clear if she can't get drunk as She-Hulk or she can't get drunk, period.
Yeah.
But I guess she can because she threw up in the last episode from drinking and she wasn't She-Hulk. So I don't know how exactly that works, but
Yeah. It always gets kind of gray because like it seems like Banner can get hurt or Banner could even get killed, but then like the moment he gets killed, he becomes the Hulk. And I think that from the wedding episode, they made it like she could get drunk as long as she was Jen, but if she turned into She-Hulk, she couldn't get drunk.
yeah, and I don't think they implied that Josh got the blood sample from her, but they didn't show if he used the regular needle or the giant needle. I also don't understand how someone would sleep through getting a shot.
Right,
I mean, if it's
right.
anesthesia, of course. I mean, maybe that's the answer. But I imagine that if I was just sleeping and somebody tried to draw blood from me, I would wake up.
Yeah, you probably would. Yeah.
Especially if it was
I
a
wonder.
giant needle too.
Yeah. I was actually very confused about that too because like he clearly was downloading the contents of her phone onto his phone. And then
Yeah.
he sends that text that's like it was like a blood and emoji and then like a green chemical emoji and then like a smiley face or something, right? He
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
yeah. So well, I had one more point about this whole thing with her. Oh, one thing I also want to give credit to the fact that there's this, she was like obsessed with her phone because he wasn't calling her back, right? And they did this really great montage where she would keep looking at her phone. She would sort of like refresh her text messages, and like, she'd be working out and there'd just be this blank phone, And I just really loved that because I can totally empathize with that feeling, you know?
Yeah, and that was just another signal to me that like, oh, Josh is evil.
Right. And so like one last thing I kind of want to say about She-Hulk was that I thoroughly like I get worried sometimes when we talk about this show because I never want to come off like those other guys that are like kind of misogynistic and just ragging on this show. I actually like thoroughly love Marvel comics that are about female characters. Like there have been excellent Black Widow comics. There's been excellent Kate Bishop Hawkeye comics, and this is all in recent history. Excellent She-Hulk comics. Um, there's one more that Spider Woman, which
Oh
I
yeah,
think that I think Porcupine is actually in that book.
interesting. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, Spider Woman absolutely has like a sidekick in her run. That's by I think it's like Dennis Hopeless wrote it. I might be wrong though, but she definitely has one of those guys that's like you just see their face and then they have like an animal body, like the rhino or the porcupine in this case. And there's like Armadillo Man that Bendis uses all the time, or the armadillo. But I think
Yeah,
she had.
I think it actually is Armadillo. Is it Armadillo Man? It's funny because they made a figure. He was a Build-A-Figure for Marvel Legends fairly recently.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the porcupine is definitely from that Spider Woman run, and that is just this excellent comic about a female Marvel superhero. So there's really awesome female comics out there, and when we were talking about Jen drinking by herself, I can't remember if She-Hulk has any issues with alcoholism, but I know that obviously Tony Stark, he's like the sort of like
Poster
definitive
child
Marvel
for
alcoholic,
alcoholism. Yeah,
right? But then Carol Danvers is actually an alcoholic as well.
yeah.
So and then they kind of have like bonding over that like before Civil War II and stuff. But I was just very, very curious about her taking that shot because she's drinking alone. I'm like, are they trying to say something here?
I think. I mean, she was preparing. I think maybe it was more like a loosening up kind of thing.
Nerves, yeah.
Nerves, calm your nerves, necessarily more so than a drinking problem. But it could be. I mean, it could be a sign of overall depression.
Yeah. So I think the next episode is written by a man as well, because the writer's name is Cody. I don't want it to be like, oh, well, we liked this one because it was a guy that wrote it. I just think that no matter the gender of whoever wrote this, if they could capture the essence of the show so well in one monologue, I think no matter what, like I'd be on board. And I really think that the show like really clicked this time around for me.
Yeah, that was an excellent like show defining monologue. Absolutely.
Right.
And I think that really helped carry the episode over the line here. Overall.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know that we got about 16 minutes till I actually have to go like run a whole bunch of errands and go out to eat with my family and stuff too. But we got 16 minutes to talk about Andor. You think we could do this?
Yes, we can do it.
All right. So I didn't even send any notes for this one, but I wrote up some notes.
Okay.
Why don't you tell me off the top of your head, how do you feel about episode 4 coming in?
I still like I like the episode. I still like the show. It's odd because it's like we're introduced to it in like an almost entirely different cast, and it feels like it felt like Andor was almost a background character in his own show here again. Like we said that about Boba Fett, we said that about Obi-Wan, and I very much felt that here as we were introduced to this group of rebels that Luthen is setting Cassian up to work with. We're introduced to some Imperial investigators or something. I don't know exactly what the hell they were, but they basically have one of them go out and fire all the Primors for doing a bad job. And I think there was one minor detail that I found very interesting in this show. So in this, I guess it was the second episode, the Karn's commanding officer who like goes on a trip or vacation or whatever, he kind of like just randomly comes up with like, oh, it was probably just some guy. These guys picked on the wrong guy and they just got into an altercation and then they picked the wrong guy to pick on. Right. And he completely pegged the situation what it was for, like off the cuff. And while the other guy, well, Karn had this elaborate plot that it was like it was done on purpose, and there's insurrection and all this other crap. And then in this, there's a meeting between two of the Imperial officers and their commanding officer. I want to say the older guy is like Pargats or something. And he
Sounds
basically does the exact same thing. So
terrible.
the one officer thinks that someone's stealing the star drive was like a sign of a rebellion, and there's a pattern, and there's seeded that we can follow traces back to and snuff out these embers of rebellion. And he's just like, no, it was probably just someone that was went and stole something for money, and it was totally on the money.
Yep.
So I find it very interesting that happened twice in this show and within 4 episodes.
Yes, and don't you find it interesting that like there's so much prequel stuff when it comes to Star Wars, and we know how everything plays out. We have these scenarios where you're dealing with the bad guys. We had the Inquisitors in Obi-Wan. We had the guys you were talking about just now. They're the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau.
Okay.
And so in both cases, like what was that the female Inquisitor that everyone didn't like? Reva,
yeah.
Reva. So we have Reva in that, and then we have Deirdre, I think, in this, who is like the woman, the Imperial officer.
And I can't talk about her without mentioning that she is played by I want to say her name is Denise. Is it Gao or Go?
Go? Yeah. Are you going to tell me that she's Alfred's granddaughter or something from Batman?
No. She played Yennefer in The Witcher 3. I love that game so much, and I like this sounds familiar to me, and that's ended up what it being.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking that like she was the granddaughter of Michael Gao or Go or whatever, who played Alfred in the Michael Keaton Batman movie.
Who knows? Maybe that's true.
I mean, she's British,
maybe
right?
she's really Alfred's daughter. Because Alfred's cute.
Oh my god. Well, my point I'm bringing up though is that you have these characters that kind of become aware of either like good guys that are hiding, in the case of Obi-Wan, like Jedi that are hiding, or in this case, like she's sort of getting the first snippets of the rebellion, and she's like, hey, we should look into this. And they're getting dismissed, and they're getting dismissed for logical reasons, like what you pointed out. But essentially, if they were able to carry out what they truly wanted to carry out and not have any interference from either like Darth Vader or higher up Imperials, they could have like taken out Obi-Wan. They could have snuffed out the rebellion in its infancy just now. And so it's like we have that hindsight because we know what the rebellion becomes. But it's kind of interesting to watch these shows where it's like, oh man, if they only listen to this person, they could actually stop.
Yes.
The Empire could still exist,
I think this goes back to Cassian's excellent speech from I want to say it was episode 3, where he mentions that the Empire is just too proud of themselves to think they can falter or do wrong. So I think that helps things so much. Like that line just makes everything make so much more sense.
Yes,
like it helps me suspend disbelief so much more than any time before.
Yeah, and I mean, it even can be applied to the classic Star Wars movies, because there is a lot of hubris, and the Empire pays for it often. But let me ask you another question, though. Do you ever watch a show like this, and do you ever think to yourself, like, oh man, most people aren't going to like this, but I like this a lot? Do you ever get that kind of feeling?
Yes. I don't think I got it from this, though. I'm not really sure. I don't know how people feel about this. Everyone I've mentioned, I've talked about the show with, has liked it a lot. They think it's different. I think everyone kind of is getting that premium cable vibe and not goofy, a little more of the goofy side of Star Wars like we've seen in some of the other shows.
Right, like The Mandalorian or Boba Fett. Yeah. Because I mean, when you have those scenes with like the Imperials just talking to each other, and they're no one is saying any kind of like funny comical thing. It's not like an MCU movie, and everyone is speaking with like proper English, and everyone is just stiff, and they have their well groomed clothes. I just think that like, oh man, people must be bored, but I'm eating this shit up.
Yeah, I imagine my son would be bored by this show.
Right. Right, and he's a little kid, but I feel like a lot of people that like Star Wars might be like, "Oh, I don't care. Get to the spaceship battle," you know?
Get to the stormtroopers, get to the lightsabers. Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
right, right. But see, I like shit like this because it's all the world building, and I
Yeah.
like I oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that there's a lot of world building here, and it's a little bit of a different view than we've seen in every other Star Wars thing. I mean, yes, it's still Empire versus Rebellion, but it's a different aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, at one point, you know, that one Imperial officer that was kind of butting heads with Deirdre, he says, "Okay, well, the Empire's just basically going to take over this sector now. Like, we're not using pre-Mor security anymore." And it's like you see how the Empire just kind of expands and grows more powerful. And I mean, that's a big part of the original movie, A New Hope, where it's like the idea was that there was the Senate that was still in power, but essentially the Emperor gets rid of it by A New Hope, and it's just like the fear of the Death Star is going to keep everyone in line. And that's what it just all comes down to, is like the fear of stormtroopers and the Death Star and Darth Vader. But we're sort of in this like in between phase, and that's kind of a good segue to talk about Mon Mothma, who's from the Old Republic, and then she's in this episode. And what did you think of her scene with Luthen, and then her scene with her husband?
Well, first I have to mention Luthen's transformation, which I was very taken aback by. I was like, "Whoa, this what the hell's going on here?" And he was all happy and friendly, and he does this little
Yeah.
little flare with his hands. I'm like, "Holy shit! Like this is crazy." And then
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
loved watching him be this enthusiastic antiques dealer in you know in front of the store, and then go in the back room. And he was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Where's my money?" Like,
Right, right, right. So
but
good.
yeah, I think I really liked that both of those characters, how they were speaking and how they were, you know, how they adeptly moved to the back while the assistant kind of distracted the new guard, and how they're talking about everyone's getting replaced. They're really trying to crack down on anything that could be anyone that could be against them. So
Right.
it was pretty good there.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love so much about it too is that they bring up the fact that like you have these people that are from different planets, even though they're human. I think I kind of mentioned this in the last episode. You know, obviously we know about Carillions because like Han Solo's Carillion, right? But we mentioned Chandrillans this time around. Mon Mothma is a Chandrillan, and obviously it's like it's just they treat it just basically the way that we treat different cultures on Earth. You know, people come from different countries instead of different planets, and you know, they take note of that driver. They're like, oh, he's a Chandrillan, just like Mon Mothma's a Chandrillan. And then she goes and she is back at her apartment or her house or whatever, and her husband is setting up a dinner party. And we can see that he kind of has that kind of style that she has as well, that kind of Chandrillan style. And I feel like there's almost this kind of air of like snobbishness about them, about like Mon Mothma and her husband, you know?
Yeah, no, you got the impression that this was like Star Wars: The West Wing or something like that, you know.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
again, like more of a premium format kind of a conversation, like very political, very you know, like she really takes a stab at her husband by mentioning like, oh, so what if we invite this race here, who they just block these trade routes and they're all going to starve now? It's like, again, this show just feels different than any of the other Star Wars shows that have come before it.
Yeah. And I feel like something bad is going to happen with that husband. Either he's going to kind of turn on her and she's going to go into hiding. I think, and this might be like a little bit of a spoiler. Is it okay if I give like a little Mon Mothma spoiler?
Yeah, go for it.
I think that Mon Mothma makes some sort of like declaration in the Senate about rebellion, and then she like goes off and runs away with the rebellion. So I think that's sort of like in her destiny. We'll probably even see it on this show.
Interesting.
I just wonder, like, is her husband going to get kind of caught in the crossfire, or is he going to turn on her? You know, I think it's an interesting
Well, I
dynamic
mean,
between those
I
two.
already kind of got a very Democrat versus Republican vibe in that conversation anyway. So I
Right,
would
right.
imagine that he's going to be more Empire leaning.
Yes. Make Coruscant great again. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, you know, it's so funny. We talk so much about all these other characters in this episode, but we didn't really talk about Cassian Andor. And it's like what you said. It's like the main character is almost like a side character in his own show.
I think it's fine sometimes, because honestly,
Yeah.
like you said, there's great world building in this episode.
Yeah.
We've talked about the ISB. We've talked about Mon Mothma and her husband, and the kind of the politicians, and then we haven't really talked about this little group of rebels that's working on trying to rob an Imperial armory and steal all their money.
Yeah.
So it just seems odd how they don't want to. They're adding this guy to this crew, and they have this whole plan, and they're all distrusting of him. I mean, I guess he's going to prove himself at some point, and I imagine that we're going to see this heist play out over the next 2 episodes or so.
Yes. Yeah, there's a couple of things I forgot to mention at the very beginning. This is considered phase 2 of Andor. Like, there's different phases apparently, and like I said last time, every 3 episodes is one phase. So
Okay.
The first 3, that was phase 1. This is now phase 2. So I do believe, like you said, that this heist is going to be like phase 2 is all about this heist. I do think that we're probably going to see some pretty awesome visuals within the next 2 episodes because of the way that they were describing that sort of planetary event that's going to occur when they do the heist. I think that'll be pretty cool. And then one last thing I wanted to mention too, because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, is that Tony Gilroy is the one that is the showrunner, but he has a brother. Let me see. I think it might be like Dan Gilroy. Okay. And Dan Gilroy wrote this episode. I think he might write every episode in this phase. And Dan Gilroy is a writer director of himself. And he wrote a movie that I really like a lot that I feel like doesn't get enough credit. And it's that movie Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal.
I have not seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really good. And it's ridiculous that he did not even get nominated for Best Actor that year. Like, he should have.
Yeah, down. I've always heard that's a very good movie. I know what the general premise of it is, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and that movie actually has a Rogue One actor in it. It has Riz Ahmed in it.
Oh, nice, awesome.
Yeah. I definitely recommend it. Like, I think you wouldn't feel like you wasted your time if you saw it. I think you would like it a lot.
Yeah, and I think after watching this episode and watching last week's, I think I really got to give Rogue One a rewatch. I did love it when I watched it, but I feel like I want to fill in some extra blanks and see if there's anything that'll help me kind of figure out where the show's going a little better moving forward.
Yeah. Do you think that, speaking of Rogue One, do you think at any point we're going to see Mad Mikkelsen's character?
No idea.
Because they like name dropped Scarif, which that's the planet that's at the end of Rogue One, like that secret base planet. Yes. They name dropped that, like, I think this episode or last episode. Oh, yeah, this episode with the Imperials.
This episode, yeah. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, we know that there's going to be 2 seasons and there's 24 episodes, so it's possible. It's entirely possible. We'll see it later on.
Yeah. One last recommendation too is there's actually like a Rogue One prequel book. It's kind of like, oh, it's a prequel to the prequel, but it's called Catalyst, and it's a lot about Mad Mikkelsen's character and like some of the other characters. And I think it's like a nice companion piece to this Andor show too.
Interesting. I'll check it out.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I know you got to go do something too, and I got to go have my birthday dinner. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Of course, man. We had a little lightning round
today. and so Brian and I will be back next week to talk about She-Hulk episode 8 and Andor episode 5. There we go. But yeah, please, if you guys have not subscribed to the channel, please do. We'd love to hear from you as well. And let us know what you think about these last 2 episodes. All right. We'll see y'all real soon.